Hello everybody, it is Rachel with another Tumbling Cosmos tutorial for you. I thought I would go over how to stitch the special blocks in this episode. There are only 3 special blocks and each side probably has a couple of each. So I just figured I would show you how to do the 3 blocks, and then obviously you just replicate it with the color combination that's shown in the pattern. So the first one we're going to do is this one that's a 3 split hexagon. So as a triangle and then the 2 sides on each. In my last video I did show how to baste this because you do need to do a reverse on these, so make sure you take a look at that to make sure it gets all basted correctly and everything. This is going to be block G5 and it's pretty straightforward, only 3 seams, so I'm going to go down here to the point and then back up and try to do that without cutting my thread. The way that I do it is I start my thread here, tie a knot, then I go all the way down, tie a knot at the end, continue all the way up and tie a knot at the end. So you end up with 3 knots and 2 sides all done. So I will go ahead and get started on stitching this and show you how that is done. We'll do it in fast motion and show you when it's all finished. Actually, before I get started, I wanted to show you a couple of things before we do the fast video. So first of all, the thread I'm using, you want to match your thread to your fabric. Some people just use a general like light gray for everything, which is also a very valid option. I like to match it. I did buy all the threads for the Queen of Diamonds, and so it's easy for me to match for Tula's fabrics with all of those, and this light purple matches great with the light purple fabric. If I have a light and a dark together, I tend to use the thread that's lighter because I feel like if your stitches show a little bit, your dark thread is going to show more on light than your light thread is going to show on dark, and that's just my method, but you choose whichever method you want. You can match it to the dark and go with that. I tend to match to the light. Obviously, if you have dark on dark, then you want to use a darker thread in general, so that's kind of that theory there. Then another tip I have is to lay it out before you start stitching. So I actually usually carry around a little board that I made that has batting on it so that I can lay out my individual pieces. This block can be a little confusing because you can accidentally stitch it like this, which is obviously not a hexagon shape. We're trying to achieve a hexagon shape. So if you stitch it upside down, then you're gonna have to unstitch it. So a really good way to triple check, don't, you know, even if you're doing 10 of these in a row, I would still lay out each and every one as I stitch it. And then what I do is I flip the piece right on top as my layout like this, so that I know for sure I'm not turning it around as I pick it up. Then I pick it up. And I don't have a really good suggestion for lining up the sides and making sure that you're not going too far this way or too far that way. If anyone has a good suggestion for that, definitely let me know in the comments, but I just eyeball it. And then my suggestion is to take about a ½ inch of stitches. So I'm going down towards the tip so that I can keep using my thread. So I will go probably to about here, and then I will open it up and just make sure that this isn't too high or too low. And if it is, it's easier to undo this much than it is to undo the whole entire side. So I do suggest double checking it once you have a few stitches in. Hopefully this looks good though. And then I will show you how I start my thread. So I don't tie a knot on the end of my thread. This is the end of my thread here. No knot at all. What I do is I tie the knot once I start stitching. So I'm going to take a stitch right at the end here, and you can see like it's literally just the tiniest little bite. You don't want to go through that paper. You're literally catching 2-3 threads as you're sewing this. I hold my tail down. I'm not tucking in any tails or anything. They're just going to stay loose in this quilt. I go through again and I pull it tight, and then I go through one more time, all in the same hole for the start, and I stop when I have a loop. You can see that loop. Then I feed my needle through I usually do 3 times. You can do 2 times, whichever, it doesn't really matter. And then pull it tight, and that's your starting knot. Okay. And then we just go ahead and start stitching. So I go about 4 stitches every 1/4 inch. So about 16 stitches an inch. And again, you're just catching just those top couple threads. It's literally, I don't know if I can get in real close. It's literally just the top couple threads, okay? And when you're pulling at the end here, you want to pull tight enough so that your thread is tight, but you don't want to yank on it like, you know, you don't need to yank hard. You can see I'm just tugging a little bit to make sure my thread is nestled, but if you pull too hard, you are going to get thread breakage. Okay, so just a little tug is all you need. It's really doesn't need to be manhandled by any means. Sometimes we think we need to, because we're hand stitching and you're just doing one line, you know, we're not doubling up our thread or anything, you feel like you need to do more. You need to do closer stitches and pull harder to make sure it's really secure. You don't need to do that at all. This is really not that different from a sewing machine. Just because a machine doesn't mean it's super different. If you look at a sewing machine stitches, they are roughly, again, probably 4 stitches to the 1/4 inch, and probably even further apart than that, actually. So, you know, you're actually, by doing 4 stitches to a 1/4 inch, getting closer than even a machine does. And again, a machine doesn't pull them super tight. It's actually, you know, pretty just taut, because otherwise you would get puckers in your fabric. So if you're noticing that you're getting a lot of thread breakage, or you are you know, seeing puckers on the front of your piece, that's a big one too, that you're pulling too tight, or anything like that, just start, you know, train yourself to not pull so tight. That is probably the hardest thing. When you get in the habit of pulling too tight, it's hard to train yourself to do different. So you just got to really work on that. But yeah, so we'll just keep going along here. I'll actually, you know, I've gone far enough to check it. So again, I did about probably a little more than I was going to, but that's fine. About 1 inch. And I'll open it up, and looks pretty darn good to me. So we will continue stitching that and finish up to the end, to the corner. And when I get to the end of this line, I'll show you what I do to turn the corner and start stitching on the next one, where I knot and everything like that, so you can kind of understand. Some people had some questions about not cutting your thread and if it was secure and stuff, so I'll go over what I do there. But I'm going to go ahead and finish this side in fast motion, and then I will explain what I do when I get to the end. Okay, so I got to the end of the row, and I have stitched once in the end. I'm going to do one more stitch at the end here, and we're going to do our loop. So at the end of each row, every single row that I stitch, I do a knot. So this allows me to continue my thread, but if for some reason where I continue my thread I have to unstitch, I have a knot here so I don't have to unstitch all the way to the beginning. So that basically gives me the chance to stop any further unstitching, if that makes sense. So I will open this up, and it's looking pretty good. So I lay it right back down. I want to make sure that I have everything right, nothing backwards. We're not stitching the wrong sides or anything. So I'm going to lay that right back down, and then we're going to pick it right up where that piece is. So nothing, again, is backwards. And I'm going to line it up as best I can. put my sew tight on, and again, I'll probably stitch another 1 inch in or so, make sure it all looks good on the opposite side, and then keep going if it does. And if it doesn't, then we will unsew. I feel like I'm a little low. I think that might be better. Okay. So unfortunately, there's not like a really easy way of making sure they line up with this method of stitching. You can switch, you know, if you do flat back, I guess that's a little easier. I couldn't really get used to that method, and honestly, I like the old-fashioned method of holding my papers this way, so that's what I do. So I still have my thread that I knotted off on the last line going, and I'm going to go ahead and start here. Now I do not knot at the beginning, so I will not knot here because again, if I need to unstitch, if for some reason this doesn't line up good and I need to unstitch, it'll be easier for me to unstitch if there's not a knot here. There is a knot at the end of the other one though, so if I do have to unstitch, it's not going to interfere with anything. So I just find this a little easier to keep my thread going as much as possible. Some of these special blocks are pretty small pieces, so it can be quite annoying to have to cut and start over, tie a new knot, all that kind of stuff. So I try to keep my thread going as much as possible. So I will go ahead and keep stitching this side. You'll see me do about 1 inch. I'll stop, I'll check it. If it looks good, we'll keep going. If it doesn't, then we'll unsew and try again. So I will do that in fast motion and wrap it up once we're done. Okay, so I tied my final knot and cut off my thread, and this block is done. So I was off a little bit on the bottom here. You can see the side's a smidgen higher than this side, but I'm not going to worry about that. That'll all ease in when I sew this to the next block. Not a big deal at all. And you can also, you know, you can see my stitches a little bit, but again, once the papers come out, that'll all ease in. I wouldn't worry about it. It is handmade. It's supposed to look handmade. It's supposed to show your stitches, so none of that is a big deal. So here's the back of my block if you want to see. So these are my tails all tucked in, and yeah, this one came out really good. So that is that special block all sewn together, and we'll put together the next one to show you. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to post this one by itself. We're going to do a short video, and then I'll do another video for the other 2 special blocks. So this is the, I guess, triangle special block. Divided hexagon block is what this is called. So that's how you put that together. Pretty straightforward. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more videos, subscribe to my YouTube channel so YouTube will alert you when I post new ones, and be on the lookout for the videos for the other 2 blocks. Thanks, everybody.